if I'm being honest, and I was getting out there, if I be honest, if I had my time over again, maybe I wouldn't have gone for the position. I wanted the role, but maybe it wasn't the right setting.
There are a few better football minds in Western Australia than Jarrad Schofield. He played for 3 different AFL clubs, winning a premiership at Port Adelaide before coaching Subiaco to 3 premierships in the WAFL from just 5 grand finals. He joined the AFL system as an assistant at Port Adelaide and then landed at West Coast during their darkest times. In this raw and honest interview, he talks about what went wrong at West Coast, Adam Simpson's departure, his time as interim coach, and then his exit from the club. We also touch on his future aspirations as he returns to Subiaco as head coach in 2026. Before we get into the chat, I'm keen to tell you about a great deal currently on offer for all WA football fans. You can score a free WA-AAMI AFL Origin Guernsey with a 12-month subscription to The West Australian. Subscribe now from $6 per week. Visit thewest.com.au/footypack or follow the link in the episode's description. Limited time only, T's and C's apply. Now let's get into our interview with Jarrad Schofield. Thanks so much for joining us, Jarrad. First off, I have to ask, what's it like being back at the home of Subiaco after all these years?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind. I'm really excited for the future, but a bit of control chaos in the early stages with a lot of change, new CEO, a new footy manager. Obviously, I was new, and then you sort of get your hands dirty and get players and retain players and compile your coaching staff, get your team around you. So yeah, it was chaotic. Took me probably a good 6 weeks to get it right. But once we started pre-season day one, we were ready to go. But it was just a lot of new faces. The one thing is that a lot of new faces, all invested, all committed. They're on the first night of training, and I think all the players were just like, I reckon there would have been over 100 people at training on our first night, including players and staff. So trying to bring that all together, sort of round out the rough edges a little bit and how we're going. And yeah, we got through to Christmas, and now we're sort of right into it.
What was it like so when you first started in 2013 at Subi and now you're back there 12 years later? Is there similarities to the way you were when you've re-entered?
Well, yes and no. The president's changed. Mark Lawrence, who endorsed me as the coach back in 2013, I learned a real hard and valuable lesson back then is when I took over the job in 2013 from Chris Waterman, I think maybe Muddy had finished, Subi might have finished 7th that year, and I sort of made a promise that, don't worry, we'll go up, sort of stuck my neck out there, and I think the next year we finished 8th. So I learned a real hard lesson to never promise anything. And then obviously, we got on a good run of 5 years in grand finals and we had 3 flags. And it came to fruition. But new president, different president now, and Russell Smith, who I actually had interactions when he was doing, he looked after the 18s. He was the talent manager when I was coaching the league side. So always had a relationship with him now, but now he's the president. The CEO is different. Having worked with Peter Capes, now Kelly Properjohn, who's been my life coach literally for the last 10, 11 years, since 2015. So I had a off-field relationship with her, and she was a mentor for me with her background, sort of being a high-ranking in the police force, and her exploits in terms of corporate industries and being on boards and that. She was a real sort of strong presence in my life in terms of rounding me out as a person. So to then sort of familiarise yourself with all these new people, it's been great. But yeah, look, the place was old and tight, if I'm being honest. Change rooms, the flooring, gym equipment. So I just felt like if this was back in 2013, it was looked like this. The players need change. And hence why I'm in the job now. The players wanted change. I felt like it was an opportunity to refresh the place with not only the facilities and resources, but also the people as well. And I think the players have really shown their gratitude towards that, and a lot of support that we've had around the place from, as I said, administration, the board, our sort of coterie groups as well has been fantastic.
And so we'll jump back. So like you mentioned before, 5 years, 3 premierships, 5 grand finals. It was an incredible run. Then at the end of 2018, you go and join Port Adelaide as an assistant coach under Ken Hinkley. What was that like? You played obviously for Port Adelaide, Fremantle, West Coast. What was that like to return to the power as an assistant?
It was exciting. The year prior, after 17, I just sort of come up losing back-to-back grand finals with the boys against Peel. And I actually had a meeting with Simo and Gavin Bell and Craig Vozza at the time at Simo's house in Leederville, and they asked me whether I'd be interested in going to West Coast in 17. As it turned out, I didn't. I just felt like I had unfinished business, and that was part of my journey. I was never in a rush to get to AFL. It was always, I'm on my time clock, and I just felt like I had unfinished business. I had a really good core group of players playing for me at Subiaco. So then I stayed in 18, and so when I left in 18, like, we won all 3 grades in the WAFL. We went undefeated at league, and I sort of felt like, well, we can't do much more than that. And for me as a coach, I'd felt like I'd achieved what I wanted, what I set out to achieve. And I'm so glad I stayed. So then when I went to Port, that opportunity came. I was like, well, this is pretty good, because I'm going back to a club where I'm a premiership player. I have a lot of strong connections there. Just felt it was the right time. And so I went on that journey and learned some great, I suppose, ways of how to educate and how to coach under Ken Hinkley. Michael Voss was there. So I was under some good tutelage in terms of some great coaches within the AFL. So that was probably, the timing was right for me. And I wish I probably could have stayed a little bit longer there, but opportunities always present. So you're always looking to grow. And I sort of, after that 3 years, I decided to return to West Coast.
Yeah, and then obviously got the job at West Coast in 2022, stoppage and strategies coach. Yep. So, like you said, 2017, you didn't take the job. 2018, you win the flag at Subi, Eagles win the flag. You come to West Coast. What was the thinking when you landed at West Coast in 2022? Because they still had a fairly strong side on paper, and we obviously know now the history of what happened. But what was the thinking when you headed there? Did you think you were heading into an era where there were still flags involved? Yeah,
well, that's why I took up the opportunity. It excited me to come back to West Coast. In comparison to Port Adelaide, such a big organisation. It was like big brother, little brother, if I'm being honest, comparing West Coast to Port Adelaide and how they run. But that's if I go back to Port Adelaide, the beauty of Port Adelaide, they had a real club feel. The history of the Magpies was still attached to that. And then coming back to West Coast was, for me, it was, big organisation, coaching under Adam Simpson, who's a premiership coach, back to my hometown, a club where it started for me as an AFL footballer in the AFL industry. So I was excited for that, and I did my due diligence. I looked at the playing list, and I'm going, okay, well, the senior boys have probably got 2 more good years left in them before we start to really bring in the young fellas. And as it turned out, there was obviously a bit of COVID still lingering around, and I think the grind of AFL footballers getting to that ultimate of winning a grand final probably took its toll as well. And there was a lot of injuries at West Coast, and it just wasn't, the first couple of years just wasn't what I thought it would be. And that was challenging because, and I remember Simo at times, sort of apologising, because they had sort of approached me, and I remember speaking to Gavin Bell again, but that's just football. That's the industry you're in. You take the good with the bad, and unfortunately we had 2 years there where it was hard, and it is. It's draining not only on the players that are trying to get themselves up to compete every week, but also coaching, administration. You challenge yourself, you reflect on yourself, and it's actually challenging for the people behind closed doors as well. But I truly believe that in those trying times, I would not have wanted to be at any other football club. The way that West Coast internally looked after their people, the way that we stayed connected, the relationships we had, I think got us through that tough period. But at the end of the day, results speak volumes, and we couldn't get the players on the parks, and that was the challenging thing. You couldn't really coach the way you wanted to coach because you were sort of trying to put Band-Aids on sort of little wounds every now around the club.
You speak about that, so I was going to ask you, in hindsight, and I think you've answered this question a bit, was what went wrong? And the injuries were the big thing. Like, it was the COVID coming out of that. It kind of lingered for the group, and then the injuries. We know, guys like Aaron Blacken, Jake Florenka, and Declan Mountford, I think, was eating a pie in an elevator at one stage and got called up to play against North Melbourne. So there was that. But in hindsight, do you think the injuries were a result of anything? Was it bad luck? Like, how do you reflect on those early few years where it kind of went from being really successful in a finals team to hitting a low that this club had sort of never really seen?
Yeah, I think it was just a coincidence. It was sort of all compounded. You had a bit of COVID. Yes, you had some players that, and every club has it, but you have injuries at the end of the year that need surgeries. But I remember, I think maybe the first year was about 14 or 15 surgeries. And then you put COVID on top of that when they opened up the borders and COVID sort of hit us. It was always going to come at some stage. So I think it just compounded everything. And then when that happens, the players can't train to the level they need to train. So then when you get into the games, they're just not durable enough to be able to sustain a whole season. So I remember, I don't know what, you can't remember what year it was now, but we played GWS, beat GWS round 2, played Fremantle round 3, I think it was, and had like something ridiculous, like about 9 or 10 injuries in that game. I remember Liam Ryan tearing his hamstring off the bone and went out for the last 10 minutes. We had guys like Campbell Chesser, running around with a grade 3 medial at half time. We realised 8 players in that one hit. And that was like, that there was sort of like just the trigger to like literally derailing that season right there. Because the guys were actually in a space where they were fit enough to get on the park, but were they durable enough to sustain the demands of week to week AFL footy? I think that really impacted. And that's probably where we've, I suppose when we talk about West Coast, that's probably where they sort of fell short a little bit in terms of the players probably weren't durable enough to be footy fit for the demands of a game, but they were fit enough to get to the game. And it was just circumstances. You just, sometimes, like, if I'm being honest, there was maybe 25 players on the track and coaches were playing. Like, I've never been so sore as a coach in all my life. Like, I think I did a medial. No, I did my meniscus one time. I had to have surgery because we were just training so much. And all the other players, and I'm now 50, but you go back sort of 4 or 5 years ago, 45, I'm no spring chicken. But Luke Shuey, when these guys were coming out, they were okay. But it was challenging for all, and it was demanding. And what it does, it impacts those 25 to 30 players that are on the track, because they're the ones that are doing everything, every training session, and then you have nearly over sort of 2/3 of your squad on the sidelines. It's challenging.
I was going to ask too, like you say that as well, and then it impacts down too, doesn't it? So West Coast at this time had also introduced their own WAFL side and came away with COVID and then came back again. And the numbers in that WAFL side, there were some games I was covering, there would be 4 AFL players, and a lot of them were youngsters. And I think one thing that was criticised from West Coast point of view at that time was their inability to develop young players. Do you feel like, and this is just a personal opinion of mine though, which probably means nothing, but the lack of senior players pushing for selection in the WAFL because of injuries and that meant they couldn't protect those young guys. So those young guys were playing as number 1 midfielder, number 1 fullback, number 1 ruckman when they probably wouldn't be normally. And do you feel like that hindered development of some players?
Oh, for sure. When you don't have your senior players to guide and nurture these young fellas and you're throwing them in the deep end, you're exposing them to men's football far too early, and you sort of need that protection layer. And it does impact their development when you've got 3 or 4, and then and no disrespect to the WAFL top-up, they're top-up players that might not have been getting a league game at any other WAFL club. They're probably playing twos footy, but they're serving a purpose for the alignment. So it does impact. It compounds everything, and I think it really did, and that's the unfortunate thing. And I still think, I'm not advocating for West Coast to get better concessions, but I think it's what they've done now, even if I jump forward now to the extra rookie spots because of the situation they're in, it's going to strengthen their program for the WAFL, which will be beneficial to them. But I also feel like they've got through the hard times of the durability of the players because they train differently now. When Matt Innes came in, he got them to a space where they were training at a higher intensity. My mail is, under their new S&C, is that they're training at a high level. They're I think today they were doing 3 lots of 20 match sim. Like, they've never done that. And I remember when I came from Port Adelaide, I said straight up in my first pre-season, we don't train hard enough. Nowhere near it. But the circumstances didn't allow you to. So I think it all compounded, but definitely back to your question around, did it hinder their development? For sure it did. And that's the hard thing for those young players, because they need to be in a position, they need to be guided and nurtured through where they can sort of develop at their own rate. But when you've only got 3 or 4 players and they're literally relied upon to be the main guys, and they're literally just probably come out of school, it's unfair.
When you said when you first got there, you said they didn't train hard enough. Was that a result of the COVID and the injuries, or was that just a general thing at West Coast? That was to be honest, that was my view after seeing, and I didn't want to sort of pass judgment too early. I said, like, I just want to see what we do pre-Christmas. And the first week after Christmas, I remember saying it to Simo and Belly and all that. I said, I just want to, because they wanted my feedback. Because I came from an environment where 2 weeks in, you're into small-sided handball games, contests, mini-sided match play at Port Adelaide. We were like right into it because the guys were literally told, you better come back in a certain condition because we're right into it. And I just felt like, maybe on the previous years of being banged up, getting to obviously 18, getting to a grand final, all those sort of things, and then over a combination of years,
it just wears on you. I think maybe they were in a bit of protection mode, but I just felt that in terms of what we did training-wise, in terms of the drills, the combative type of game sense drills, we didn't do them, and that was my view. I said to him, we don't train hard enough in that space.
What was the response?
Well, it was positive. Yeah, everyone takes feedback, and then we started to literally layer in. But it's also one of those things when you train a certain way that gives you success, you keep going back to it, and that's just reality. You go with what you know. So we were in a bit of in that period where I came in. Matty Knights came from Geelong. So we came from different clubs. Like Geelong are different to probably Port Adelaide. And I don't want to talk about Geelong, but Matty's view on training, my view on training were very similar. And then obviously the coaching staff at West Coast had done it a certain way, which had given them great success. One of the most skillful sides in the competition, at their prime, successful, made grand finals, won them. So you always go back to what you know, and the players literally feel familiarised in that as well. So we had to make some subtle changes, and the coaching staff that were already there, especially Simo leading that, were very open to that. But you just can't go from 0 to 100 and do it. You've got to layer in certain shifts and changes, and then you've got to try and work that within the parameters of strength and conditioning side of things, the high performance team versus the availability of players as well, and where your list is at. Yeah. The one thing I'd say that probably impacted as well is having a lot of players, and West Coast have still got some players, well documented, that don't do full training, and not every club's got them. But I just felt that in my time there that there was players that were really doing one main session a week. And to me, it's not enough. I've seen it. I've seen it with certain other players at Port Adelaide where they actually detrain because they get managed so much. They detrain, and so then when the heat's right on or the games are on and the sustainability, they can tend to break down because the body's not durable enough to do it. And I just feel that in that sort of period where there was injuries, COVID, and then senior players that could not get on the park for 2 out of the 3 sessions, it impacted as well.
And then you spoke about the list then. I suppose rightly or wrongly, one of the criticisms over that time was that West Coast kind of held on to too many of those senior blokes and didn't bring other guys through. Was that an internal view looking back now, or do you think that was easier to say in hindsight given that the injuries hit?
Yeah, exactly right. I think it's easier to sort of, in hindsight, sort of say, oh yeah, should have done this, should have done that. But when you don't have experienced players out there on the park and help develop the young fellas, well, you need to hold on to a couple extras that you might have made a decision on. So I understand that part of it, but I don't think also the young fellas were deserving of being brought through straight away. Now, maybe in hindsight, maybe you could have, we could have maybe looked at the transition, 12 months earlier, 18 months earlier, but that's hindsight. But I know at that time it just wasn't black and white, in terms of get these guys out, bring these guys in, because as I just said before, it's you want experience around to help not only show them the way, but also to help educate them and help coach them on the ground as well, because the coaches are on the sidelines, they're not on the ground in games. You need your leaders out there, and unfortunately it was a combination of all.
I remember, and then fast forward to 2024, I remember the first press conference you did after Adam Simpson parted ways with the club and you were named interim coach. I think you said, it might have been Gavin Bell came to you and said, or Don Pike came to you and said, do you want to be interim coach? And you leapt at the opportunity. What was that time like? Because it's obviously, like you said, you'd had a good relationship with Adam. He was effectively your boss, and then now you're taking his job for 7 weeks. Yeah,
it was even probably the back half of the year before. And Simo, I commend Simo how he handled that whole couple of years. A lot of pressure. What it did, it opened my eyes up to going, well, you got the highs of the highs when you're winning flags and everyone wants to pat you on the back, and then you got to be able to cop the whack, when things aren't going well because you're leading the club, and thought he handled it really well externally, internally. And it was hard because you're trying to support. And to be honest, I had no thought process, even in 23, even in probably the start of 24, of going, oh yeah, if this is coming, I'm ready to go. I wasn't thinking like that personally. I was more thinking, okay, me and along with the other coaches, how can we support Simo? Because Simo's putting his neck out there, because we are a team within a team. So it's like, how can we support Simo the best, and how can we take some of the pressure off him? And to his credit, he was like, as a head coach, you could easily go, oh, I'm taking full control and I'm doing everything because my job's on the line here. or you stay on the course, which is how he coached, is that you give autonomy to your assistants. And he still was able to do that with all of us. And so when it came about, you could sort of got a bit of a feel probably for about a month that things were starting to maybe head that direction. You saw people start talking internally. And even then, I wasn't like going, okay, it was probably maybe the week before when I really thought it was going, I probably thought, okay, if it comes, are you ready for this, Jarrad? Because to be honest, I was disappointed when when he had COVID and Matty Knights was a stand-in coach up against Brisbane. I felt that could have been an opportunity, and I was disappointed in that, and the club knew that. And I said, so if anything ever happens, he gets sick, whatever, I'm ready to go. So I'd already put my neck out there probably 2 years prior. And so when it came about, I literally ran off the track where it was pouring with rain. I remember it, and Billy pulled me in. I couldn't even have time to dry. He goes, oh, look, this is what's happened with Simo. There's going to be a press conference. We want you to step in. Are you ready for it? I said, yep. And it was like, if you'd given me the night to think about it, I probably would have said no. I can tend to dwell on things, but in that moment, I was like, okay, I was sort of preempted in my own head, ready to go. And I was very appreciative of the opportunity, understood the circumstances. But for me, it was more respect the man that's given so much 11 years service to the club, respect that moment right now, be grateful for the opportunity. One of the biggest clubs where I started my career, you're going to get the opportunity, whether it's for 1 week, 8 weeks, 8 years, who knows, but let's just embrace that. But my head was really in about, okay, how do we support the playing group, had a strong relationship with Simo, respect Simo for giving me the opportunity to come back and help educate me and grow my coaching career. So I was more sort of weighted in that space until the press conference, the goodbyes. So the first week was probably the challenging one where you couldn't really get into it too much because it was really still raw for everyone. But yeah, look, it was an opportunity that when I said yes, and if I go back, I didn't have a contract to be an assistant on the table when I said yes to being the interim. So I was in sort of talks with the club to say, look, prior to that, I know Simo's situation, and it was like back and forth discussions around, well, if Simo does go or whatever happens, we can't make that decision at the moment whether you're getting to sit, because if a new coach comes in, they might want to bring their own team. I said, well, okay, fair enough, but I've shown loyalty, I've done this. And then probably about a month later, that's when obviously the interim job came available. So I was like, part of my reason for jumping out was that show that I have got the capabilities to go up, also show my buy-in, no matter what, that I'm here for the club. And for me, it was also just probably rewiring my coaching love, being an assistant for 7 years, after coaching as your own for 6 years as a head coach is completely different. So for me, it was like reigniting my passion and my want to be a head coach. And look, 12 months later, I'm now coaching Subiaco. I'm head coach, but it's not probably at the level where I was in that period, but that's just football.
Check this out. A shipment of award-winning Bowers & Wilkins PX7 S2E noise-cancelling headphones has just landed in Australia. The quality is amazing, and they're available exclusively from West Coast Hi-Fi for just $429. That's right, just $429. Hurry in and feel the experience this summer at West Coast Hi-Fi. I'm going to go listen to the pod. You go 2-5 from 7 games, and after the back-to-back wins over Gold Coast and North, there's this groundswell for you to be named permanent coach. I think it's been a groundswell like that since Paul Roos at Sydney when he got the interim coach and then took it over. What was that time like for you? Were you sitting there appreciating the support? They obviously head down, bum up, trying to finish the season, and I know it didn't go well down at GMHBA in that last game, but
it didn't.
But we were both there at that game, and I remember it. I remember seeing you afterwards, and you were still in high spirits, but it was obviously not the greatest. I think it was a 93-point loss.
Yeah.
But those 2 games, there was this groundswell, the support. Like when we run the paper, we try and feed off what the atmosphere is from the people. And even at training, you could talk to people and they were saying, oh, Scully's doing a great job. Like if he got the job, we'd love it, know. There were former players, Glenn Jakovic was one, I believe, that was even saying, give you a fair crack. Like what was that like for you at the time?
Oh, look, I'd be lying if I didn't say it felt really good to know that there's a lot of support. You always, your close family and friends are going to pat you on the back and blow smoke up, But to have the support of our fan base, and I think the biggest thing for me was the buy-in from the players. They've just dealt with a coach that coached their whole career. I've been there 3 years, 4 years, and 3.5 years. And it was like, well, so the relationship and the connection and the support that I had from internal, no disrespect to the outside noise, really sort of really stuck with me. And that's not just the players, that's the administration, high performance, welfare, everyone that was involved. And that gave me a lot of confidence just to be myself. And that was the one thing that I said to myself is that don't try and be Simo. Don't try and be this new head coach because you're a head coach. Just be you. So I've always been an honest person, being transparent. Sometimes it gets me in a bit of trouble. Most times it keeps me out of trouble. But I feel like if you have relationships with people, you can be transparent. But I come from a place of care because I've been a player where I used to get whacked around the ears. Mickey Moldhouse back in the day, and even Mark Williams just to give me a couple of stern words, and you learn to sort of harden, the exterior a little bit. But also, both of those men showed me the art of care and love for your players and your staff, and that's where I just wanted to be that person. So the groundswell, I felt it, don't you worry. And I think I actually really enjoyed the 8 weeks or the 7 games because I got to experience every emotion in that 7 weeks as a head coach. Winning, close, and getting belted. But what it did for me was like, these are the emotional swings that you deal with. But the hard thing is that I think we lost by 12 points to Brisbane. Everyone called it the sugar hit. But we planned a certain way and the players executed. So what it showed me is that when the players execute and buy in all the time, they were capable of competing with the best. And they did it against 3-time premiership team, So I look at that, and then we came against St Kilda the following week and lose by 12 goals. And I'm going, only a couple of changes, but the team that was against St Kilda, I think we might have been the youngest for the round, I think it was. But I didn't say that to the players at the time, but in my head I'm going, okay, This is the ebbs and flows of when you've got a young, inexperienced side with, say, lacking the real core leadership group. But what I said to you can't go from losing by 12 points to 12 goals in 1 week with maybe only 1 or 2 changes, man. So it was actually literally it was a great little segue to me. Go, boys, this is about choices right now. And I remember using the word choice, and I said, boys, the choice we have right now is to be the team against Brisbane or to be the team against St Kilda. And what I saw against St Kilda was that we rolled over. And I said, you never want to have that stigma where you rolled over. We want to be the team against Brisbane. No matter what, you keep going at the best, and you respect that. And then we got some games. And then obviously you think about the Gold Coast game, North Melbourne, minute and a half to go. Should not have won that game. But you get Jack Darling doing what he did. Elsker Allen kicks a goal. But Jack Darling, inspirational spoil. Because I've got a poor memory, but all these moments are in my head because they were so special. And the emotion within that was just like electric. And you sort of it gives me goosebumps talking about it now. And then obviously, and then you finish off the year against Geelong, as you just reminded me. I think we might have been down by 93 points at half time, but we won the second half. But that moment, I'll talk about that moment and we'll put that to bed. But remember 10 minutes in, there was 10 minutes to go in the first quarter. I actually just said to the coach, I turned to the side and said, boys, how long to go? One of the coaches goes, you don't want to know. He goes, I looked at the clock, it was 10 minutes, and I think we were 6 goals to none. I'm thinking, oh, okay, can we have a mercy rule? Can we have a timeout here? And that was one of the moments for me as a coach. I remember speaking to the welfare guy going, my old ways would have been give them a clip. They need it, but it's the last game. You've got a young group. We're down in Geelong. It's always a tough road trip. Okay, I've got to be calculated here. So I was pretty calculated, and then obviously the second quarter didn't get much better, but you could sort of see a bit of change. Anyway, then I just challenged him at half-time. Once again, around the choice, the club, the jumper, who you're playing for, not you're playing for yourself, you're playing for your family, things like that. And I said, now it's about respect. How are we going to finish this? Whether Geelong take the foot off the gas or not, I said it's about us. And then you walk away and you go, we won the second half. So you take a positive. But honestly, in terms of being grateful, I'm grateful to be able to experience the opportunity to coach, be able to experience all the emotions of winning in the game, getting belted in 7 weeks. And if I never coach AFL again, at least I've experienced it.
Do you feel like at the time, because I know you'd put your head up for the job full time and you were going through the process, do you feel like at the time you'd done enough, and were you disappointed when you didn't get it?
Yeah, well, as you said, the groundswell was positive, and then it started to wane a little bit in probably the last few weeks, and people started to question and whether they need change. if I'm being honest, and I was getting out there, if I be honest, if I had my time over again, maybe I wouldn't have gone for the position. I wanted the role, but maybe it wasn't the right setting. Having been interim, the history of interim coaches, but I sort of didn't want to listen to that at the time because I felt like I was in a good position. I felt like I was in a good space to take that next step. But probably in the back of my mind, there was just this little seed of doubt that the club wanted change, that the club wanted someone externally. And maybe they had already had their sights set on other people, and respectfully, they gave me the opportunity to go through it. And yeah, maybe I wasn't up to it to compare to the others, and that's all part of the experiences, and you learn and you live by that.
And then you did the amazing thing, and you stayed under Andrew McQualter, who obviously I've met, and you obviously know pretty well after a year there. Was it a hard decision to stay? And how did that come about? Did Andrew come to you? Was the club?
Yeah, look, obviously he's new, trying to get people across to Perth. Would have been challenging for him as well in terms of getting coaches on board to go to Perth to a side that's getting whacked. So it's not like the club was attractive. It's a big move for anyone coming from the eastern states, but once you come to Perth, you don't want to leave. So I will sell that one. So for me, we had a great conversation and wanted to make sure we're on the same page. By that stage, the club had given me a 2-year contract. So that was comforting for that space for me personally, that I know they had 2 years to coach with Minnie. But also, you know that always change is going to come with coaching staff. You know that he's going to sort of look to communicate and reach out to opportunities for other coaches to come in and change things, because there's a lot of change at West Coast over the last couple of years. So, we were up for it. It was just trying to adapt to his style of play, his coaching style, it's for a 12-month period. There was a lot of change and a lot of adapting, but that's all part of coaching. You just got to keep fluid and you got to keep adapting to whoever's in charge or whoever's around you.
And then unfortunately, you're contracted for 2 years, but they let you go with another year on your contract. Were you disappointed at the time?
Yes, very disappointed. And if I'm being raw and honest, the only conversation I had with the club was about 6 weeks prior. We were playing Port Adelaide over in Adelaide that week, and I got approached by Woosha around the whole rumour mill that I was going to go coach with Kari, and that's where that conversation started. And I said, look, I haven't had any conversation with Kari. Yes, he's a mate, he's a premiership mate. The last time I saw him was in gather round, and we just talked footy in general. And he said, look, what's your situation? I said, look, I'm contracted. He said, okay, we'll just stay in touch. And that was the last thing that was spoken about. So the rumour mill started that because Kari had the job, I was going to go coach with my mate. But that wasn't true. And I told the club that. And their I suppose, feedback to me was just, look, if anything does change, just keep us in the loop, and we'll obviously support whatever decision or wherever it goes, whatever way it goes. And left out of that. And then it wasn't until I was actually sitting there waiting to do an exit meeting with Jaden Hunt. Actually didn't know whether he's going to turn up because he just retired the day before. And I was actually just doing part of my review and just got the call, just got called in with Minnie and Woosh, and they just said there's no easy way to tell you this, but you won't have a role this next year. Whoever they've been speaking to had given them notice that 24 hours prior that they were going to take up the opportunity, and there wasn't a role for me. And so I was disappointed. The only thing I was probably disappointed about, and looking back in hindsight, the thing I was disappointed about was the lack of communication and the honesty and the transparency. So if there was an inkling 4 weeks from them telling me that, look, we're heading this direction, it might be best that you explore your options, I would have been comfortable. I'm a grown man. I would have been comfortable with that. But I feel like I got blindsided. But I also understand the brutality of the industry, and Minnie's in charge. Bush has got a job to do. The club's got no one person's bigger than the club. So once I dusted off the ego a little bit and the cracks and repaired myself a little bit, I just looked straight forward and what's next. And I have no ill feelings towards the footy club. I wish them all the best. I'm a past West Coast player. I had a great opportunity to coach there. Just how it was handled, I think could have been done better. But understand that they're an organisation looking to get the people that they want in there, and Minnie felt like it was making change, and I respect that, and we all move on, and we go forward.
But now, like I said, you're back at Subiaco. Are you a different coach?
I feel like I am. My son did tell me, he goes, and that was one of the things when I took on the job. I said to Taj, I said, "You're going to be okay with this?" He said, "Yeah, sure. As long as you don't bring footy home too much, so don't burn me out." And so that's our agreement, father son. But yeah, look, it's I feel like I am. I was really demanding in my early stages at Subi, and when you're chasing success and you're getting success, you chase perfection. And I feel like now that the game is made of imperfections. And so I think I've learned a lot of how to sort of manage my emotions, how to manage other people's emotions. IP-wise, in terms of my footy IQ, I think I've learned a lot, under Ken, obviously under Simo, even in the year with Minnie, learning. He's been at Melbourne, been at Richmond under Damien Hart. We were all connected in some way. And then you learn off other coaches. So I'm definitely a lot better for what I am now. Do I still get passionate? Yes. Have I raised my voice at the boys at Subi? Yes, I've already raised my voice, but not to the level that I used to. So all these sort of like hit and miss that I'm this really demanding person are not true. I'm a different person now from what I was 10, 12 years ago. Finally growing up a little bit. But look, the generation of men that you're dealing with these days just don't operate that way. Back in my time playing, when you got coached, we operated that way. But I think now, I'm better for it, footy IQ-wise, how to manage my own emotions, but how to bring a group together connection-wise. I'm really excited for hopefully what we can achieve as a football club. And I say football club because as much as I'm coaching the league, I'm very passionate about making sure Subiaco feels like one club. Yep. And that's all the way through our reserves, our Colts, our Rogers, our women's program. So I want to make sure that we are the club that the WAFL are talking about, the old Subiaco powerhouse.
So a couple of broader questions then about football. WAFL, what do you think's changed since you exited? Because football just evolves naturally. It just gets quicker, different, whatever. What do you think's changed broadly, WAFL? And where do you see the future of the competition? Because it kind of feels like the AFL reserves are an inevitable prospect.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think it's the equalisation, as much as I know why they brought the equalisation in years ago, to even out the comp with the point system and bits and pieces. It's good to see Perth. So they've taken a while, but they've got Stoney involved, got Barra involved. Seems like they've got the good foundations to build something, and obviously them playing finals last year, and that creates momentum. So it's good to see that story. But you're always going to have your strong teams because of the zoning and what comes through. They're always going to be strong. So my challenge for Subi is now, how do we get that up? Yep. How do we now get ourselves back up into that mix when we were so dominant? So I think from an equalisation standpoint, I think there's a bit of fairness there. I would like to see more money in the WAFL from a salary cap point of view. So then we can attract players. So when players might come out of the AFL, they don't just stay in the VFL or go to the SANFL. To come to Perth, living's more expensive than what it is in SA, probably Melbourne, probably as equal, if not more. So it is challenging to get Eastern States over. One, living arrangements, you obviously find them jobs, but also if you think about football, you've got to make sure that you're attractive from a contract point of view as well. But I think the standard of WAFL football, from what I've seen when I go watch Taj or when I watch the WAFL Eagles, the alignment side teams, when they've got their AFL mix, they're a strong mix, and you want to see them be strong because I think it makes every other club raise the bar to be at that level, and that's how I look at it. So I want West Coast to be strong round 3 when we play them. I want them to have as many as they want because it's a challenge to our boys to go, all right, this is what we're playing against. Same with Peel when we play them the next week. So I want those teams to be as strong as they can because I think they make the competition better. But I think the standards there, it'll be interesting. I said, look, in terms of the real ins and outs of the WAFL game or the WAFL football comparison to other state leagues, I can't give you that information. I don't have the intel on that. But what I do know, I think teams are adapting and playing a certain style that is conducive to the grounds that we have in Perth. We play on bigger grounds compared to Melbourne and SANFL. So the game seems to be a little bit quicker. And that's generally the trend of AFL. So the trend of AFL, the game's obviously so quick now, and you get the best teams that are just lightning. And everyone has different styles. So I think that will be in vogue. I think that will be strong. I just think it'll be interesting to see what the new rules bring into the comp. And I think if I'm being honest, I think it's great that we've actually followed suit. Sometimes I don't think we're all on the same page with what's happening in, say, like the SANFL had the last touch rule. They've had it for a while. We haven't had it. So now we've got it because the AFL more or less bring it in. So even the new ruck rules, having that in the WAFL. So all these new rules that the AFL are bringing in, that we're bringing in, I think is great and be aligned with it.
Before we get to Jarrad's thoughts on how the Eagles are shaping up for the year, let's talk boots. For over a century, Sydney Kidman stood for cattle, courage and country. A man who built his life on the strength of the land and the people who worked it. Today, Kidman carries that legacy forward with boots and clothing designed for resilience and authenticity. Each Kidman piece reflects the rugged elegance of Australian landscape, made to be lived in. Their boots are crafted from premium cow yearling leather with Goodyear welt construction and a trampoline core insole for the all-day comfort and endurance. It's just a better boot. Explore the collection today at kidman.com. West Coast, where do you feel like they're going to go this year? Do you feel like I know they only won one game last year, but it kind of felt different to previous years. It felt like everyone's kind of pulling in the one direction and the rebuild is now in full swing. How do you view how they're going?
I think if they're healthy, I think they would be stronger. Like they were a stronger and a better team than a one-win season in my eyes. And from the games I saw, I know the work that Kyle Horsley did behind the scene, Jacob Brown and Shannon Hearn, they could be in better hands with those guys developing him. So, yeah, they probably should have maybe won 4 or 5 more games. But what it was like one quarter or like a quarter and a half where they had like a 10-goal blowout. And that was probably the story of AFL too. Yeah. And sometimes that's just inexperience or lack of AFL players too. So I think if they're fit and healthy, yeah, they could really surprise some teams. And as I said before, they've got 4 extra rookie spots. So depending on who's playing in the AFL side, look, I'm not selecting the side over there now. But if you look at the players they brought in, you got Finn McRae, Dev Robinson. Who's the other one?
Harry Sharp.
Harry Sharp. Like they've all played AFL.
Yeah.
Now, who's to say they don't play in the WAFL? I don't know what West Coast are doing with selection-wise, but you put 3 of those players in their WAFL side in the midfield, that's going to be a tough challenge. So that's where I think they'll get the benefits of that as well, because if they're playing AFL, those 3 young men, it might mean that someone that was playing 10 to 15 games last year AFL are playing WAFL. If they're fully fit. So they're going to be stronger if they're healthy. And I definitely think it will make them better, but definitely make the competition better.
Who are you excited for West Coast? Everyone naturally thinks Harley. He looks fitter than everybody else. But is there a player that you look on the outside now and you go, I just can't wait to see what they do in 2026?
I think Elijah Hewitt's always shown great talent. If he gets himself fit, he could be a real talent. I think someone like I know we've spoken about Ruben Jimby, but I think like way he's come on, and yeah, look, we tried to play him in the midfield when I was there, and then we put him back. He wanted to be a midfield. Even my last year, he wanted to play midfield, but he was doing so well down backs, mate, you're staying down there. So, and I saw someone mention, I might have been Clay Hall mentioned that he should be up for State of Origin. I totally agree. Like he's an absolute animal. The way he trains, prepares, he'll get every success. So I think him. Real young ones, Tom Gross has got some, he's got some real natural talent as well. Give me a couple of names. I've gone a bit blank on them.
Well, I kind of look, everyone gets a bit excited. Job Shanahan was one. We think he did some stuff. You know, he started at centre-half back, I think, in the WAFL, and then came in as a forward and showed a bit of natural craft. Yeah,
I probably have to focus on the midfield. Job Shanahan. Yeah, he's an interesting story. Like, he was at WAFL, probably not performing to the level the coaches thought he should be performing. Real laconic. He's got that laconic nature. He was getting outbodied, and then we're going to selection going, if only he could just, like, contest-wise, we're thinking at AFL it's going to be a different beast for him. Like, is he ready? Is he ready? And I reckon as coaches, we spoke for about 6 weeks on that. And then as soon as he came in, it was like, probably should have done that earlier. But you always want to look after the players. So, yeah, to see what he did in the back end, and then by all reports, his body shape, he's physically looking stronger and fitter, probably oozing more confidence now. He's going to be a real talent. Yeah, and when we put him back, it was because we knew he could play back. And you're looking at the forward line, but now he could be a real general in that forward line for sure.
And Fremantle, the other team you played for over here, there's a lot of excitement around them. They seem to have not got a hole on that list. What do you think for them this year?
Yeah, look, it's. I think they've got the list to compete for sure. They should be a top 4 side, but things happen throughout the year. Players lose confidence. You get a few injuries at the wrong time. You lose a bit of confidence. It's just the nature of the industry. But I like the way they play. I know a lot's been spoken about how they play the game, and whether it's ball speed, when they play slow, fast, whatever it is. But I know, having coached the game when I was coaching, but also when you're coaching against their midfield, tremendous midfield, well led. Luke Jackson, he's a freak. You like a couple of him, but they're well led and they're well drilled. Like, their contests, when they're on around the contest, their ability to sort of have a really good inside fight and how they hold their shape around contests and how they exit. Like, his first class is probably one of the best, I believe, when they're right on point. But I like when they play exciting football. If anything, it's probably from an outside looking in. And I think we might have, when I say we, I'm talking West Coast. There was maybe a game on the year where they didn't have Subiaco. There was no Fredericks. I think they lacked a little bit of speed. So I think when they lose that top end speed, that's when their whole team looks a little bit slow, because you wouldn't say Sarong's the quickest or say Brayshaw's the sort of super quickest. So it's one of those ones where when they lose those peripheral players where they've got the extra speed, it's like, okay, well, how can they combat that? And I just think, I think when they get it on point, I think they're a challenging side.
And finally from me, mate, you're at Subiaco for the next few years at least, but do you still hold dreams of being a head coach at the AFL level? And do you see yourself back in the AFL at any stage as an assistant or a head coach or any other role, I suppose? Yeah,
look, I said I'm really taking the time to work on myself. I might be doing a little bit of media, not with this. I won't mention who, but I might be doing a little bit of that. So I'm always open to that, to keep my sort of the pulse on the AFL. I've got 2 years at Subi. Look, I'm never going to say no to the opportunity of going back into the AFL. It's got to be the right fit. My family's all here in Perth now. So my daughter's just moved back from Adelaide. So I'm always going to look at my career. I still think I'm capable of coaching at the highest level. Me going back and coaching WAFL, is that a step back? I don't believe so, because it's making me round out my head coaching position. I'll do some PD on myself. I'll stay involved with people I know within the industry, and I'm always going to be open to that phone call. So if anyone's listening, give you my number. But in saying that, if it doesn't eventuate, I know I'm going to enjoy my journey at Subi. I'm going to enjoy getting my weekends back from not having to travel every second weekend and being around family and friends. But I won't be lost to the game at the next level. But it's not going to be the be-all, end-all if I don't get back there in a couple of years or in 12 months' time. I just love doing what I'm doing, and there's other opportunities out there.
Oh, well, Jarrad, I could talk footy with you for hours, mate. Thank you so much for coming in, and I look forward to seeing how you and Subiaco go this year. I think you've got a really exciting squad, and from what I know about you, that they're going to be stronger than they were last year, definitely. So thank you for coming in.
No, thanks for having me, and strong words there. I hope we will be stronger.